There are shops out there that have loaner vehicles for their customers. Do you? Is it something you've always thought about doing? Well, it's something to think about. You could bring potential revenue to your business, provide value for your guests. Let's get into it. Today, we're talking with Laura Tierney, and she's going to talk about whether this might be a great option for you.
Welcome to Body Bangin', your podcast for all things body. Auto body, that is. And now, introducing Body Bangin's host, Mickey Woods of Mickey Woods Marketing. Mickey is a former auto collision center owner and is now a marketing and business development expert to shops across the globe.
Hello and welcome back to today's episode of the Body Bangin' Podcast. If you are watching this on YouTube, make sure you hit that subscribe button. Our subscribers are growing like wildfire. It's so exciting to see. And then if you're subscribed, you also want to probably hit that notifications button so you get notified when a new episode drops. If it's on your phone, it'll just pop up for you. So it makes it nice and easy. And then if you're listening on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, obviously you want to follow us there because we have a new episode that releases every 2 weeks. So we're going to get into it today. And you guys know that I am not a big salesperson. I don't have a whole lot of companies come on trying to sell their products. Well, we don't have anyone yet. At the same time, there is something that's getting talked about a lot on the Facebook groups and chat boards, and that is talking about loaner cars in your shop. So I recently connected with Laura Tierney, who's with us today. Hi, Laura.
Hi, thanks for having me on.
Yes. So Laura is with shoploaner.com. And the reason, I've watched a couple of podcasts she's been on, and I was like, she's answering a lot of the questions that shops are posing and chatting about in these Facebook groups and in these group chats. So I wanted to have her come on and talk with you guys today, specifically about loaner cars in your shop. Because even if you don't have loaners, which a lot of you don't, you've probably thought about, should I be doing this? Is this something that would bring value, or is it a waste? And how do I manage all of these vehicles? And that's kind of what the shops are getting into on the board. So let's talk about it today. So we've got Laura on. Laura has been in the industry for 8 years and has been with Shop Loaner. She knows all about loaner vehicles, right, Laura? This is all you do all day.
It is. I answer questions about loaner vehicles all day long.
Isn't that weird to think about? It's okay. I talk about marketing all day long.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
Question that we'll start with is, there are shops out there that are like, should I or shouldn't I be doing this? And Laura and I talked a little bit before we started this podcast, and really this whole thing really exploded in the collision industry during COVID. And I think that's where a lot of this came up, with the lack of rentals and that type of thing. And now shops are seeing other shops providing loaners, or customers coming in saying, do you have loaner vehicles? So the shops are saying, well, first and foremost, what would qualify me to be a good candidate for having loaner cars? Can you get into that a little bit?
So I honestly think any collision repair shop would benefit from having their own loaner or rental vehicles. And we'll kind of get into like more specifics about it. But I think if you just think about it from the aspect of, it is a great way for you to secure a sale and bring business your way. Because like you said, customers are hearing that this is a possibility at other shops, and you don't want anyone driving past your shop to another shop and taking their business elsewhere.
Right.
So this is a really good tool to say, hey, we have these vehicles available, because we're going to find out, hopefully, as we talk through this, there are a lot of customers that are going to seek you out for that specific reason if you have those. And you're going to be able to secure big ticket sales, basically, that maybe you couldn't secure those if you didn't have a vehicle to put a customer in.
Right. Well, and a lot of shops, I think, hear loaners as, I'm going to do this for free for people. And it doesn't necessarily need to be that, right?
No, so it's a great way to add revenue because, again, you secure the sale. But the other thing is, if you think about it, if you're putting a customer in a vehicle that you are trying to rely on Enterprise or Hertz to get you and your customer that vehicle, someone is paying Enterprise or Hertz a daily rate for that customer to drive that car. It's either the insurance company that's paying for the repair. They're putting that customer in a replacement vehicle at a pre-negotiated rate generally, or if that customer is not got that fully included in their insurance policy, that customer might be trying to pay for that rental car themselves. And rather than that money go to the rental car company, if you have your own fleet of replacement vehicles that you can put someone in, right there, you add on, you could be adding on $300 to $500 to your typical repair in a collision shop, because instead of that, rental revenue or replacement vehicle revenue going to Enterprise rent a car, it will go to you. You basically invoice them and you get paid those dollars. So I think that's a huge benefit right off the top to having those vehicles available.
Yeah. And I can see the benefit. I mean, if you go to a dealership, depending on the level of dealership you're going to, you're getting a loaner. So there's a certain, I don't want to say class of people, but group of people that the expectation is when I bring my vehicle in to be fixed, I should get something else to drive. Now, granted, most people understand in a body shop, that's not usually the thing. Although, having driven like a Dodge and also driving a Jag or a Land Rover, like Dodge is not going to give me a loaner. But when I go to Land Rover or Jaguar, I'm getting a loaner when my car gets serviced. I mean, it really feels like personally as the consumer, it's a great perk. Like I really feel taken care of. Like, oh, wow. Thank you so much. Yeah. You're caring for me now at an extra level than just the base.
Right. And I would tell you that in a collision shop, like you said, people aren't expecting you to have it. And if their insurance coverage actually does cover it, they might expect it. But the other great thing is you have that whole other level of customers that really might not have that high-end policy. And so now they are really struggling because a collision repair takes typically at least a week. I mean, that's on the low end. Yeah. So if I'm struggling to figure out how I'm going to have replacement transportation for a week or more, and you can offer me this, it's a huge benefit to me. Now, you could still offer it as a courtesy loaner and to secure that sale. But for that customer that doesn't have that high-end insurance coverage, what if you even said to them, hey, I will offer you this vehicle at $20 a day? It's, again, for someone who's struggling to figure out how they're going to drive to work every day, that's $20 a day is nothing to ensure the fact that you can still drive to work or get your kids to everywhere they need to go. I mean, surely you would pay that if you were struggling to figure out how you were going to survive for a week or 2 weeks without a car. Much cheaper than going to Hertz or Enterprise.
Totally. I totally agree with you. And I can hear the shop owners in my mind with a few things they'd probably be like, yeah, but. So but, I feel like there's several. Where do we begin? Yeah, but where do I store these vehicles? And how do I manage this? Because now we're already strapped, we're stressed, we already have our hands full getting in and delivering vehicles, QC, the whole thing. And now we're adding on something else. And I have limited storage already for the vehicles that I have. I feel like those are two, and I'm sure others will pop in my mind. Those are the two that pop in my mind immediately.
Right. So let's start with the storage issue. Yeah. I think that there is a good formula to figure out how many vehicles you need. And if you just start out with a few, your vehicles are never going to be there because you're still going to have the same number of vehicles to repair on your lot that you always had. But your cars aren't going to be there. They're going to be with the customer who's driving it. And you just basically have this constant flow of, we can start your repair on, Monday of next week, we do the exchange. You bring your car in, I give you another car. So it's nice to be able to schedule them out and try to have like a plan for how you're going to give them to the customers. But if you really kind of get them scheduled out, and you will, I feel like I have a recent collision shop that just started doing this, and they started their own, and it's typically what happens is someone starts their own little rental car company. And again, I'm going to use air quotes because we're not really starting a rental car company. We're renting cars to collision customers.
Right.
But he was like, I'm going to start with 2. And he realized by the end of the first month, he needed 10.
Oh, wow.
But he was making, because he was very careful to put the customers that were getting replacement vehicles and insurance companies were reimbursing him, he could get 10 cars lined up to be repaired while those 10 cars are out. Now, I think that's a very quick add to go from 2 to 10. But you can understand, as soon as you start doing it, you start to see the flow of the vehicles, and you start to realize, well, if I have this many vehicles, I can have one per bay, and then I have one car waiting maybe to go in.
Right.
And again, you get the timing of, how many technicians you have to work, et cetera. So basically, if you have that many technicians, you could have 1 to 2 cars per technicians that can be working. So they're working on a car and they have a car waiting.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yes.
And you kind of follow that formula so that as soon as they finish the one car, they receive the loaner car for that one back. And then they start working on the vehicle that was waiting. And you just have 2 vehicles kind of rotating for that one technician.
Right.
And you constantly have a line of cars waiting for them to work on them. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
But everybody has to follow their own formula. But I think that's a good way to do it. You look at the number of people that you can actually have working on vehicles on any given day.
Right.
And that's how you figure out how many you could use. Does that make sense? And then you won't have to store them so much.
So 2 rentals per tech is what you're saying.
I think that's in general a pretty good rule of thumb, because again, as long as you would normally have, if that's how you would normally handle your storage, where you have 1 vehicle in the bay, 1 vehicle waiting to go in the bay.
Right.
You basically have 2 customers now happy, and they're not calling every single day. Hey, is my car finished? Is my car finished? I really need my car back.
Right.
If they're in another vehicle, there's not that panic for them to get their own vehicle back. But you can, if you have their car just sitting waiting and they don't have a vehicle to drive, then that becomes an issue a lot of times for customers. But if I have another vehicle to drive and mine's just sitting waiting to go in as the next repair, it's not as big of a stress to your customer. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And they stay more satisfied. Yeah.
Right. Well, and it's tricky too. And I know there was another part of that question. We'll get back to it, because oftentimes shops take longer to fix a vehicle than anticipated. It could be a parts issue. It could be production. It had to go, there was an issue with it, had to go back in. And now the customer, the guest, is over their rental days. So now they would be accruing a bill, where now if it was your own vehicle being in a shop, now it's much easier to be like, don't worry, we've got it covered, versus dealing with reimbursement and all of these other things that can be a stress for the customer.
Oh, absolutely. In a collision repair shop, I just had my vehicle fixed like a year and a half ago. It got hit by an Amazon truck, and they gave an initial estimate. And they lined it up for when they wanted me to bring my car in. And it took a long time, honestly, before I could even get the appointment to bring the vehicle in.
Right.
When I brought it in, they did give me a vehicle from Enterprise Rent-A-Car. And it took a month for them to get my vehicle fixed, because once they start taking your vehicle apart, as we know, that timeline just gets longer and longer, because they have to wait for approval again. Now, if I had not had that vehicle to drive, I would have been struggling the whole time. And I think honestly, probably Amazon has good coverage, because I did not have a bill. Maybe Amazon did beyond, the insurance.
Right. Yeah. Possibly. Okay. So let's get back over to shops feeling stressed because they're already dealing with so many things, to now add this Now, here's another process. Now, here are these vehicles we're going to manage, and who's going to do that. And basically, who's going to, because it's time and effort. And most shops are short staffed and already are wearing 15 million hats. Do you see, because this is all you work with all day, that this creates a heavy workload for the shop to start integrating this?
So if you kind of think about it in the fact that this probably happens anyway, where you are putting someone in a replacement vehicle, a lot of times people who are working in the shops are still kind of orchestrating the rental car aspect for the customer if that's covered. Now let's just think about that same employee. Instead of having to contact the rental car company, they say, well, here's how we manage the process for our vehicles. And again, what we like to do is just put a process in place that makes it pretty simple and quick. And the number one thing that I always tell people about putting a customer in this car, we're talking about stress, is let's cut down on the stress by cutting down on the liability. So the number one thing, and maybe we're going to talk about this a little bit more too, but the number one thing is you're going to want to have a good agreement, legal document between whoever owns those vehicles, and that could be the shop, or you could put them in a separate rental LLC. You want a good agreement between that company and your customer that basically says, and here are the things that you're responsible for. Here are the things you're not allowed to do because you are driving a vehicle that doesn't belong to you. So the thing is for that agreement to be really good and airtight, there are a lot of data fields that need to be filled out on that. So we want to get the customers, basic information about this person, name, address, phone number, all those kind of good things. You want to get that customer's driver's license information. You want to get that customer's insurance information. And then the second piece of it is you have to be very specific as to which vehicle you're putting them in. So that's time consuming to say, oh, well, it's a Nissan Sentra, VIN number, blah, blah, blah. So you can imagine if you're filling this out by hand and you're saying you are having to dictate, like, it is this specific car with this year, this VIN number, et cetera, that could be really time consuming. So we come in and we try to make it so that it can autofill as fast as possible. And the main way to do it is say, this is a vehicle. So we know all the data fields about that vehicle up front. That's the easy part. How do we get that customer to fill out all their information? And what we always suggest is let's send a link to the customer, get all their information flowing back to us from them, including pictures. Let them document their driver's license with a picture. Let them document their own insurance card with a picture. Because at the end of the day, what you're saying is you're driving this vehicle, you're responsible for it. Your insurance is covering this vehicle while you're driving our vehicle. That's very important too. In order for these shops to make it affordable and have affordable insurance on these vehicles, they're going to look for an insurance company that specifically is tailored to loaner or rental cars, because purchasing that type of coverage is a lot less than full coverage on a vehicle, if that makes sense.
100%. That was actually in my notes because I'm over here writing things as they're coming to mind, and I'm like, insuring this thing, what would that look like?
So you want to find an insurance company that will just kind of give you that coverage, because the understanding is we're going to insure this vehicle as a loaner/rental, but you are going to make sure that customer has coverage before you let them drive it. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So I, as the customer driving the car, and you as the shop owner, your target customer is someone who does have full coverage insurance. That will cover your vehicle. You don't want to make it any more risky for yourself. We're going back to the stress thing. So we want to make it so it's pretty low stress. We want to have that customer have full coverage insurance, and then knowing that we have this other insurance policy that's going to basically fill in the gaps if anything goes wrong.
That's what I was thinking. Totally. Because if the customer gets into an accident, their coverage covers their accident on
Correct.
that vehicle. And then you have insurance as the backup just in case, something goes wonky or whatnot.
Yes. And then the first thing that will happen is when you go to look for that coverage, that insurance company is going to say to you, let me see what kind of agreement you're going to have that customer sign off on. Because again, if you just kind of skip through that agreement, it's not going to hold water. And then, something happens, you send the documentation. Okay. So typically what happens is, let's just use me as an example. I drive this shop's car. I wreck the car. Okay. So the very first thing that's going to happen is that shop owner is going to contact their insurance company and they're going to say, oh my gosh, someone wrecked one of those cars that you're insuring for me. That insurance company is going to go after the customer's insurance.
Okay.
And they need that document. As soon as that document's produced and it's complete and accurate, argument over.
Gotcha.
It just passes to the customer's insurance company and the claim goes to them. If you don't have that documentation filled out, okay, so now we let someone just scribble down like the customer's name and phone number and we threw them the keys. Okay, that's the other scenario that happens in the world. Okay. Yes. Oh yeah, here you go. I know I'm giving this loaner to this person, throw them the keys. When that accident happens, you have nothing that you can produce that the customer signed off on before they left with the vehicle. So that's what we're trying to cut that part out of there for people. When you use our system, you're not allowed to skip things. Like it's going to going to kind of yell at you like, no, you can't move on without this information type stuff. Yeah. And then we're going to keep that document for you. So you're not rifling through like a file cabinet, trying to find a piece of paper that somebody signed. You're just going to go into that vehicle and you're going to see all the documentation you created for that car.
Yeah. So it makes it nice and easy. Yeah. I'm going to interrupt this podcast for just one quick second because a lot of people wonder, Mickey, what is it that you even do besides host a podcast? Well, I do marketing, and really the biggest thing that I do is help you drive more traffic to your business. And not even just more traffic, but consistent traffic to your business. As a former shop owner, I know how important that is. So if that's something you're interested in, or you just want to talk about marketing or developing your business in general, feel free to reach out. You can visit collisioncentermarketing.com. There's a calendar on there, and you can just book a time that works for you, and we'll set up a phone call. Or you can email or call me, and my notes are down in the description of this episode. But I hope to hear from you. I'd love to help you build your business. But in the meantime, you better get back to this podcast because it's really good. Well, and I think with anything, if there's a process in place, it makes it much easier to manage. I mean, really with anything. And like you had said, most shops are already contacting the rental car company on behalf of the customer to help them get in. So this maybe takes a few extra steps, but with the proper procedure, it shouldn't take a whole lot of extra manpower.
I mean, I kind of run through this with people on a day-to-day basis. And I tell people, if you really get good at this and you kind of get your process in place, you can go in and reserve that car knowing like, okay, this is a car that would be good for this customer starting Monday morning. I'm going to hold it. I'm going to send them the link. So now you've taken care of vehicle. I've got the vehicle going to go into the document. And once that customer sends back all their information, that's going to flow through into the document. And basically you're going to have like 90%. And honestly, to create that reservation, I'll just tell you, it takes about 20 seconds. Send the link. Yeah. Once you get used to how to do it, it's just like grab a car for a day. You need a name and a phone number, reserve it kind of thing. Right. And then, you can work through that pretty quickly. And, they walk in the door. If all goes well, you're basically reviewing the information that they gave you, save, and boom, they're out the door in another 20 seconds. Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah. The only thing I ever tell people that takes any time to really move someone from that vehicle from available to rented, customer from standing there to the vehicle, we do offer also the option for you to be able to go out and take walk-around photos of the car. So if you were doing this like on an iPad or a tablet, I could see that taking a few extra seconds, which I highly recommend doing that. Yeah. But that could slow you down just a tiny bit. But honestly, other than that, I mean, it is like a couple clicks to get them out the door.
Right. Now, one of the things somebody brought up, there was a mixed bag of reviews in the few chats that I was checking out talking about the loaner car thing. Some people were like, it's great. It's amazing. My customers love it. Others were also saying this is a great little revenue stream for us. And then other people were complaining, well, we tried it and customers trashed our vehicles. So we were having to repair them constantly. We were having to buy new ones to replace the old ones so quickly that it became an expense with all the maintenance and everything else. Do you see that happening a lot?
I'm gonna default back to that agreement because we also have a way you can put your own custom disclaimer on that agreement. So if these are the things, like I will say, it's so much better off to let customers know ahead of time what the expectations are. And then so again, if you can envision this agreement, it's going to have this like disclaimer on the front. And when they receive this link, before they sign, we have little we call them acknowledgement boxes where you have to tick things as you sign off.
Yes.
So if it's important to you, no smoking, no animals, they're going to have to tick every single box before they sign off. Okay, so let's be very specific about this. If you smoke in my vehicle, like no smoking in the vehicle, or there will be a $150 detailing fee.
Right.
Okay, so number one, that's going to, I honestly think, prevent that from happening more often than not, because people are going to think, well, this could happen. I'm going to get charged $150.
Right.
And then at the end of the day, when you do that check-in process, we do have a way that you can basically tally up charges. So smoking, I would say is a big one, detailing, things like that, or like little nicks and things like that, where you can charge them for damage. If you don't think it's an insurance claim worthy thing,
right.
But you want to add charges into the return process for that type of stuff, fuel is a huge one because you're going to expect that customer to replace the fuel. It should all be on the document. Again, I'm going to keep going back to the document. Yeah. We have it all on there so that now we get to that return process. There's no confusion. I'm going to add that in. And by the way, we have a way to tally it up. We have a way to charge them. The other thing I think is great too is we have a way to send text messages through our system. And I know a lot of people have probably another system in place that allows them to text and send customers messages. Ours, for example, though, I suggest you set up these little templates ahead of time that say things like, oh, hey, by the way, your repair is finished. Please return your rental loaner vehicle by the end of the day today. And just make it a nice, friendly thing, like as you received it with a full tank of gas and clean. You know what I mean?
Right.
Just one more little reminder. And if you are having problems with that and you want to put in there because there are these fees involved if it doesn't come back that way.
Right. Yeah.
I always just say it's like an ounce of prevention.
Totally.
Kind of helps that kind of situation from happening in the first place.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, good point. And I think in body shops, I work with so many shops and we all agree the best thing you can do is educate and communicate. So this is no different of giving proper expectations ahead of time when it comes to fixing a repair. This is how long we anticipate if there's parts issues, but so you kind of go over all of this stuff. But I really do like the idea of the follow-up text or even a call. If somebody's calling, hey, your vehicle is ready for pickup. You do have your rental out with us as a reminder. Can't wait to see you. Whatever, however that looks like for the shop. I think you're exactly right. Setting that expectation and reminding people because they forget. I mean, when we drop off a car, people got into an accident, they're in an emotional state, they're not remembering a whole lot. Got it. But at the end, that's another opportunity to remind them. And they did, like you said, they signed the document. There's a legally binding document. You're not just making stuff up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Per our agreement that you signed.
Yeah. If you remember, we agreed on all of this. Now, is there another revenue stream when it comes to the loaners beyond just renting them out?
I mean, I would say it's more of where you're going to want to make sure that you're, there are some possibilities, but most of it's honestly, in my opinion, recouping monies that's the other stress that people have. Like, well, how am I going to recoup the fuel money? How am I going to whatever? Mm-hmm. So as long as you have that in the agreement that you can recoup, but another big one, people worry about though is like the tolls, or like if you're in an area where there's red light camera tickets or anything like that. Again, that's all going to be on the agreement, but how do you account for that? And so one thing that we do, and again, I always tell people, it's one of our extra features, and I think it's very geographical who needs this, but we do have the way to embed an online merchant account into our program. So if you especially are running this separate from your collision repair shop, you're running it as an independent kind of rental, it's just a very easy way for you to get a point of sale for that company. But we put an online merchant account into the program for you. And again, if you need it, if you don't, and you want to run all the charges through your regular point of sale, that's fine too. But what it makes it super easy for, at the end of the day, when you're tallying up those charges, to say, well, I have your credit card on file. So if I were to charge you like that $20 a day rental rate that we talked about for the customer who doesn't have a rental car in their insurance policy, like all those things are going to add up. And, the fuel, the cleaning fees, anything like that you might think like, okay, well, how am I going to collect all this money? We do have a way that you can charge their card while you're doing the return process of the vehicle. Then you have those pesky things that come in, those post-return charges. So now I found out, and again, if you have a shop in Chicago, New York area, Dallas, these are high toll areas. A lot of these areas have red light camera tickets. So these things could really add up for you. And I always say, well, who was in that car on that day. You have an agreement that says that you will charge their credit card for any of these things that could come in. Click, click, click. You can see, it's very easy to find in our system. You look at the history of the car, you see their agreement, their credit card. And again, it's a very secure way to do it. It's PCI compliant because again, it's a merchant account. So the merchant account is storing it, and we hold a token is how they're able to come back and make those charges at a later time. So again, you should only be making money with these cars, never losing money, is my point on that. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, when you get some of these places, you can imagine if someone had your car for 10 days, what your tolls could add up to be.
Yeah.
It could be a lot. So, you go in there and you say, wow, this person owes me $75 for tolls, and you just process it. And we also even have in there, you could also be responsible for paying like the service fee on that. Because again, why should I pay a merchant account fee to process your tolls? You know what I'm saying?
Exactly.
Same way for red light camera tickets.
Yeah. It's funny you mentioned that. I got a red light camera ticket in a rental myself, and they tracked me down and was like, I think this is you. And I didn't realize. I didn't even realize, but they were able to hunt me down. I was like, oh boy, there I am in the picture. So, and you're right. Why should we be eating that money? But I think the value is I'm a businesswoman first and foremost. So if there's a stream of revenue that I can add to my business that makes sense, doesn't create a whole lot of friction or friction at all, really. It's an extra process that's fairly seamless. For me, from a business perspective, definitely something to check out, if nothing else. And then from a marketing standpoint, this is something that you can market to prospective guests to let them know, to differentiate yourself from other shops. And then the value that it brings, allowing the customer to know that you have gone the extra mile, that you are doing something. So it's like that emotional connection of they're taking care of me. It's not just they're not just repairing my vehicle. They're taking care of me with the other steps that are involved in it. I think, and not all shops even want to dabble. I work with shops that are doing $1 to $2 million a month. They're like, we're so busy, we can't even think about doing it. Like, hey, great. That's not for you. It's easier to just call Enterprise. We called Enterprise, they're on their way, whatever. And there are other shops doing multi-millions of dollars a month that can see this would be a massive revenue stream and potentially worth it. So it's kind of like every shop, I think, has to figure out for themselves that this is a good fit.
Yeah. I do. And I will just tell you the one other thing. If a lot of those shops that maybe are listening to your podcast right now, they may already have 2 or 3 cars that they have been doing this with kind of like low key, like, oh shoot, we've got a customer that doesn't have replacement vehicle coverage. So we're just going to let him drive one of our cars. I would just tell you, we offer a free 30-day trial. Our software is super affordable. And so if you're already doing it with your 2 or 3 cars and you want to just see how it would flow in our software program so that you do, mainly so you do have good documentation and you take that stress of that liability away, because the people that are most grateful to us and like come up and see me when I'm, out and about at like trade shows, or they'll email me out of the blue and just be like, oh my gosh, I just want to let you know, like, I had one of my cars wrecked, but like everything was perfect because I had all the documentation and all I had to do was produce that document. Those are my people who are super grateful. So, and it just really takes that, I know it works is my point. When the worry, it takes the worry away, because that little document that you can produce that, like with the click of a button, you see the whole thing and you're like, oh my gosh, I have it.
I'm good.
We didn't just throw someone the keys. It's a big difference. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
So
that peace of mind.
It's just, we both know that their shops are probably never going to do it. They're always going to live that risky life where they're like, oh, it's just a car here and there. It's not a big deal. But if you want to try it out, and then I always think that's a good way. Like if you have a few cars there that you can try it out with, and then you start dabbling in, well, let me bill this out to the insurance company, or let me build this. But I'm sorry, I'm going to have to bill you $20 a day. Like I said, you can start testing the waters with that and seeing if you can make some money with these cars. Because from my estimation, I'm pretty sure that these rates that are pre-negotiated for Enterprise and Hertz are somewhere between $35 and $40 a day.
Yeah.
So the insurance company is willing to pay them $35 or $40 a day for a replacement vehicle. That's what you're going to get. And they may limit it to 10 days or something like that. I think there are some limitations for most policies, but if you think about that, we're talking $350 to $400 added on to every RO that you put a customer in one of your vehicles versus using Enterprise.
Right. So,
I mean, that adds up.
Absolutely. 100%. And shops are working hard to make sure they're getting paid for all the things that they're doing and getting reimbursed for all the things and being hyper focused on that. And this is another way. The money is going to go somewhere. So, and it's not free. So this, and I know we could I'm a question asker, so I feel like, and this is really intriguing to me, especially as a former shop owner, I'm like, I would totally do this. But these are all the questions that I have. So I feel like I could take so much more of your time, but I won't. One question that just popped into my mind is how quickly, and we could do the math, and maybe you don't know off the top of your head, but how quickly are shops typically paying off? Like, if you're purchasing a vehicle, to be able to put out on loaner, how quickly are they recouping that money? How to then be in a profitable space? Do you have any idea of that?
Well, okay, so I'm going to answer that question in a different way. These are the 2 ways that I know that shops decide to get cars. Okay. One, they're going to find a lease. And right now, leases are not the easiest thing. But the reason that the shops for leasing vehicles for loaner/rental is because it's a set amount. They have it for a set amount of time. And generally, all the maintenance and everything's going to be included. And that car is going to stay at a certain level of repair until they turn it back in. Right. So we're not trying to recoup the purchase price, but we're just trying to like break even above and beyond what our lease payment is per month on that vehicle. Lease payment plus insurance payment, how much am I making in net profit above that? Right. The other way that I always recommend acquiring vehicles is for these shop, whether it be an independent repair shop or a collision shop, you have access to vehicles that people don't want to keep anymore. True. And you can fix a vehicle a lot easier than I could get a car and fix a vehicle.
Right.
So when you have access to, for example, and I might not use all the right lingo, but the concept I think is correct in that you have access to a vehicle that maybe has been totaled out. An insurance company is going to pay X amount of dollars if you turn the vehicle in, or a certain amount if you don't turn the vehicle over to the insurance company. Get those vehicles. Fix them anyway. Especially, I've heard lately with all the vehicle shortages and COVID and everything else that's going on, they're totaling out cars that really are not totaled out.
Right.
So we know that used cars have a huge value right now.
Yes.
Get those vehicles. Don't turn them into the insurance companies. And again, I don't know what the dollar amount is that you're going to pay for them, but it's going to be a lot less than you going to try to purchase a vehicle.
Right.
Fix that car. And I will tell you, most of the people that I know doing this, that is how they're acquiring their vehicles.
Okay.
They are grabbing up those vehicles that, again, I'm not telling you to take something that's completely really totaled and shouldn't be driven and is a safety hazard.
Yeah.
You want to get a vehicle, but I just have heard from a few people that I work with that these insurance companies are totaling out cars and they're really fixable. But because of the time, effort, and parts shortages and everything else, the insurance companies just trying to cut their losses, and so they're totaling out cars that can be fixed. So if you have access to get those cars, and again, a safe vehicle that's clean and drivable, fix it up and start using it, and you probably can get a decent car in your fleet for maybe $5,000 or $6,000.
Yeah. It's interesting you say that because when you said that, it reminded me that a couple people had commented on Facebook that that's what they were doing. That when something would come through, because sometimes there's a theft recovery. It hasn't even been in an accident. Like I got an Escalade when I owned my shop. For me personally, it was a theft recovery. There was no body damage. There was no structural damage. I had to replace the third row, headlights, a front dash. Give me a break. And I got that thing for pennies on the dollar. And I think that's what a lot of shops are taking advantage of because we do get those. So I'm glad that you brought that up. I think that's a great way that it doesn't need. And I think in my mind, I'm thinking, we need to go buy a new vehicle where not necessarily.
No.
Yeah.
No, I really wouldn't even recommend buying a new vehicle because again, that adds to your stress level. I just bought a new car and somebody's driving it and putting their dog in it and smoking in it. If you only paid $5,000 or $6,000 for this car, all in, it's not quite as stressful to you. And I've had people say that to me. Oh, and here's another little tidbit. And again, I won't take too much time, but so let's use the example of I just rehabbed a car and I have $5,000 or $6,000 all in. I had a customer tell me that they had multiple vehicles like this. They own like a high-end Euro shop and somebody wrecked one of their cars. Well, they were also, because they had our documentation of how much revenue they were getting from these vehicles, their insurance not only paid them out for the value of that car, which was more than $5,000 or $6,000, but also loss of income, loss of revenue. So they could say, well, this car makes me, $5,000 a month. Yeah. And until I get it replaced, I'm also losing that income. And they were paid out by the insurance company for that as well.
Interesting. Good point. Wow.
There's a lot of ways. Yeah. So there's another way you can make money on it.
Yeah, exactly. Good point. Well, for all of you guys that are listening, if this is something you're interested in, I know there are other companies out there that do it. I don't know any of them. But you can check out shoploaner.com. Like Laura said, there is a free 30-day trial. At least look into it. And you could call Laura. Obviously, you can see she's very knowledgeable, works with shops all over. Ask her if you have questions about your specific situation. And I'm sure I know you'd be willing to help them out, Laura.
100%. 100%. And in an easy way, if you ever want me just to run through a couple things with you, on our website, there's a request a demo button. And it's painless. I'm super nice. There's no high pressure sales. It's just me kind of explaining. I do a web meeting with people and explain what we can do for you. You ask me questions and then it's you say to me, okay, I think I do want to do the free 30-day trial. We help you get it set up and, you can put your cars in and start from there.
Yeah. Perfect. Well, thank you so much for coming on. Poor Laura, I had to reschedule on her a couple times, so I'm glad we finally made it happen.
Yeah, I'm glad to be on.
Yes. And thank you guys. Is there anything, Laura, you want to say before we close out for today that I missed?
No, I just really appreciate being on. And I think this is going to be a new concept in the collision world. So if you're thinking that you might want to do it, just let us know. We'll help you out.
Yeah.
Help you get started.
Love it. Love it. Well, thank you for listening to this episode of Body Bang. And make sure you subscribed because you know the next one's going to be great too. We'll see you then. Bye.
If you enjoyed today's show, make sure you hit the subscribe button. We have some incredible topics and guests coming your way you will not want to miss. If you are watching on YouTube and don't want to miss the latest and greatest, you'll want to hit the bell after subscribing, so you will get a pop-up each time a video podcast goes live. To our devoted fans, would you mind paying it forward and sharing this little gem with someone else you think may benefit from it? Much love from all of us here at Body Bangin', all things auto body.